Welcome to the Purely Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Logan Anderson, founder of Purely Performance and third-year student at University of Washington. In today's episode, I sit down with Dr. Terry Phillips, founder of Phillips Rehab, how to base by pros in Lynnwood, Washington. We're talking all things Tommy John, why it's on the rise, what you can do to protect your arm, and the real story behind surgery and rehab, so you can come back smarter, stronger, and healthier. Let's get into it. All right, Terry, thanks for sitting down with me today. Just want to give a little background since you obviously know my story, but just for the people that don't know. So I had Tommy John, my first one back in June of 2024, and that's kind of when we met. And then I went on to have like a year-long rehab that kind of didn't work out. Nothing to do with you, obviously. We went our separate ways.
We're still here.
Yeah, we're still back at it. But anyways, things didn't go quite as planned and ended up needing a second one about 6 months ago. And this process has been great for me so far, and I'm really happy with how it's went. And we're back at it together, working hard. So that's a little bit about my story with Tommy John. Obviously, there's more on my page, so you can check it out there. But I would like you to just introduce yourself, kind of tell them your background with baseball, and then kind of your background, just a brief overview of your PT experience.
So my name is Terry Phillips, physical therapist, been a PT for 16 years now. I have worked with, both in Gen Pop and a sports specific population. I worked at Driveline Baseball down in Kent for 6 years. I was the on-site PT for a while there. Baseball being my passion, and grew up playing it, played in junior college. Great thing about working at Driveline is that it afforded me to work with like a ton of different baseball players, individual baseball players. I think that's kind of what put me in a unique spot as far as, if I'm looking at the amount of individuals I worked with that play baseball or softball, it's probably like in the several thousands. So that's, from that perspective, it's kind of afforded me like a wealth of experience. But then also as being like at Driveline, just had the chance to work around like some extremely, extremely smart people related to baseball. So I've been able to kind of combine like that experience, that knowledge that I gained from there into my own practice. And now I do have my own practice now, Phillips Rehab Performance, kind of doing like a hybrid of PT, but also strength conditioning, working closely with our strength coach here at Base by Pros, Nick Kemper, and just trying to make it more like one continuous model. So those gaps that typically get seen between like the PT side and the return to play side get filled and are a little bit more of a continuous fluid motion.
Awesome. So how many years would you say you've been in like the PT space?
16.
16. Wow.
Yeah, 16. I mean, then PT school for 3 years, so a while.
Okay, yeah, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge there. We're definitely going to be going over a lot of like Tommy John specifically, but this also just like applies to rehab in general, because there's a lot more like ways to optimize rehab than just for a Tommy John surgery. But I just wanted to like clarify why this topic kind of matters to me. And I think I've really been through the lows of a rehab process, and I've seen the highs as well, especially with the second one. So I know like the differences of like when something isn't quite right, like with the programming, and when stuff is right and how it should look. And I just know how much it sucks, the mental aspects of the lows of the rehab. And I just want to help people that kind of feel lost in that process and give some clarity. And maybe it's not the final answer, but like kind of lead people towards finding the right help that's going to give them the answer to kind of get out of those lows overall. So I just want to kind of talk about Tommy John as an epidemic, because that's what I kind of see it as.
Yep.
I want to hear from your perspective, like, why are we seeing so many of these surgeries right now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely multifactorial.
Totally.
I think I could rant about this forever, but I think when you go on the internet, you go on social media, like, and it's weird because like it's seemingly like the highest level people as far as like surgeons, PTs that work in like in the, for major league teams, they're doing a lot of like finger pointing at like it's one of these two, three things. It's, chasing velo, it's chasing spin rate, it's aggressive training with weighted balls. And people like to just say it's like, because that's simple, simple say it's just these things.
Yeah.
Typically they get demonized because they just don't understand like the level of thought and nuance that goes into it. But I think when we're actually looking at like the epidemic, it's like it's a systemic thing. And like I'm not saying like those things aren't playing a role. Anytime you're trying to like increase your velo and you go from 90 miles an hour to 93 miles an hour, that generally comes with like increased stress to your arm. And your body has to be prepared to handle that stress to your arm. When you are learning a new pitch that has a ton of spin or like again not as much spin, that's just a new stress on your arm, whether it be actual pure torque, or if is it just applied differently. That's something your arm also has to be adapted for. But I think also just like at the systemic level, just like everything at the lowest level is so professionalized. Where it's like historically, like maybe like D1 pitchers are the ones who maybe have like the most mileage on their arm, but and that mileage as things start ramping up would maybe be like 12, 13, 14 years old. But now it's like, as you mentioned before we went on air, Devin Morgan's podcast was like,
Yeah.
there's 7U signing days now. And that's like a professionalization of things, which is absurd. And in my practice, it's not uncommon for me to see like 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds who are playing like 100 games a year.
Yeah.
Uh, I think at that base level, that's like basically getting the ball rolling for like just wear and tear on the arm, for lack of a better term. Exceeding. That's a prime example of like load exceeding capacity, where it's like the amount of load like these kids are getting is far exceeding their capacity to tolerate like that loading, because they don't have like the chronic workload, the fitness built up, and then maybe that doesn't get them injured at that point when they're 9 or 10, but like it's setting a table for like the arm to kind of be beat up, have fatigue going into their later years, then
Yeah.
that cascades in like injuries as they start throwing harder.
Right.
So I think again, it's like, and that's even, I mean, and that doesn't even count into like other factors too: pressure from parents, pressure from social media. Um,
Mostly what I hear you saying is like a culture, the
yeah,
baseball culture and how it is right now.
yeah,
And it's like the need for speed. And I see those posts all the time from different people talking about, well, we've seen one recently that's been trending a lot about like, this is the standard in baseball now,
yeah,
100 miles an hour. And it's like, no, that doesn't need to be the
yeah,
standard. And now these young kids are getting that image in their head of, I need this velocity. So
yeah,
not only are they chasing that velocity, getting to those higher numbers at young ages, which their body might not be prepared for,
mhm,
but like the
yeah,
training schedules, the way it's spaced out, and then just like work hard. Yes, you need to work hard,
mhm,
but recovery is so important. And that's something that I've really learned through my
yeah, yeah,
second rehab. And my first one, I still prioritize that. Just getting surgery in the first place
mhm,
really causes you to focus on that recovery aspect. But like with the issues that we've run into with my forearm
mhm,
and like overworking it and learning how to space all that out. And I
yeah,
think that's a huge aspect that's missed and that I totally even missed out on before I got the surgery because
yeah,
I was just thinking Tommy John velocity.
yeah,
That's what the equation is. It's like higher velocity and you're throwing more often. It's like that's what it is. But there's the nutrition, there's the sleep, there's the training,
mhm,
the weight room, everything contributes to it.
yeah,
So it's a super multifaceted issue.
yeah. And I say, one thing I kind of harp on my athletes is like the higher you go up in your velo, it's the corny like Spider-Man saying of like with great power comes great responsibility. It's like when you're throwing 75 miles an hour, you can generally, I mean, if you're like older and throwing 75 miles an hour, you can generally do whatever you want. High likely you're not going to get hurt, both from a pure stress perspective, but also like you probably won't pitch much.
Yeah.
But as you get like, you have a higher velocity, especially relative to your peers, your margin for error just like decreases. So that's where like things become much more important, especially given like the game schedule where it's like, okay, now I have to talk to like 12, 13-year old about like their nutrition. Uh, so it definitely comes harder and harder as like you just throw harder.
Totally. And then kind of going into the misconceptions around Tommy John itself. I feel like there's these ideas out there. We hear it all the time of, oh, you're getting surgery, you're getting Tommy John surgery. Well, it's all right because you're going to come back
Mhm.
throwing harder, throwing stronger. Like you come back better, and it's a really smooth process, which is just a wild
Yeah.
misconception. And it's seems more clear every single day to more people I talk to, just hearing the issues that they had with their
Mhm.
rehab process and then experience on my own side of things. So, what are your thoughts on that? What, how have these misconceptions even created themselves?
I think there's been something actually I've wanted to like write about recently, but just haven't gotten around to it yet. But there are definitely like instances where like athletes come back throwing harder from Tommy John. It's not totally out of the realm of like possibility, but when you're looking at like why that might be, it's commonly like at the crux of it is that they just stop doing the stupid things that like stupid things, but like the things that got them injured in the first place.
Totally.
So like they after surgery, like they're now actually probably dedicating time to training.
Yep.
They're probably now dedicating time to like improving throwing mechanics, as much as I don't think that's a major component to like injuries happening in the first place, but that's going to help like with your throwing efficiency, which help throwing harder. They're just taking time off from playing, and their body's probably actually recovering. In addition, like learning all these steps along the way, I've used mentioned like of recovery that goes into just a better outcome of performance and
Mm,
as well as health. So I think in those instances, like yeah, those athletes have a pretty high likelihood of like throwing harder. With that said, that still is like assuming one, the surgery goes well itself, which definitely isn't a given, and then two, like the PT aspect of it goes well itself too, which is like again, I'm not gonna ever like I won't say I won't ever, but like I'm not gonna generally throw like other PTs under the bus, but like what goes into like throwing 95 miles an hour isn't stuff that gets taught in PT school.
no. And there's
And
just so much new stuff coming out
yeah,
every year about the rehab process of Tommy John, right? So if you're
yes,
not educating yourself
yeah,
every updating your education on it, then you're going to be falling behind on
yeah.
what's
It took me 7, 8 years before I was like, shit, I should like train pronation. Like for my athletes, it's just like, and that's me being like in the thick of it. Like
yeah,
now it's like, even like if I just told, if you put me together with like a group of baseball PTs and like, I was like, oh, I just learned about like training the pronator, like they'd be like, you're an idiot, dude. Like we've been doing
what
this
have
for
you
the last,
been
like, yeah,
doing?
where have you been?
Yeah.
Um, but that's still just like something that just isn't commonly practice, maybe not pronation per se, but like, finger flexion, whatever, like train those muscles like with intensity. It
Hmm.
just typically just gets missed in traditional like PT programs. But like, unfortunately, like a lot of athletes are going to have to go through that process with PT who may or may not be, best equipped to get to that level of like where they want to be from a velocity perspective.
Yeah. And I feel like as I've considered why these people think like, oh, it's a smooth process, you come back throwing harder, more so on the side of people that may not be in the baseball world
Mm,
themselves or are just observing from the outside. I feel like the media, it's all focused on MLB players.
mm,
And of course, you're not going to hear the stories of the guy that never made it back to in-game
yeah.
competition, and you're only going to hear the amazing
Mm,
stuff of like, wow, he's had two Tommy John surgeries and he's back here throwing in the World Series and
mm,
whatnot. So in the MLB, we got to look at what type of resources they have,
yeah. Yeah.
what type of PT they're receiving, and you got to look at they're getting paid to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
paid to do this rehab process, and they have the best resources. This team's going to ensure that
Mm,
this process is smooth. So, like, yeah, of course, it's going to look like this is a smooth process. You're
yep.
coming back throwing harder because they have all the resources possible. And that's something that I think shouldn't be the case, which
Mm,
is obviously really hard because the resources are expensive.
yeah.
But at least the educational gap doesn't need to be there between MLB PTs and like even the player knowledge themselves of the process and how it goes.
Mhm.
Um, at the D1 level, I think it is definitely higher than like a high school
Mhm.
PT or what a high school player is going to understand. But even then, there's still a gap between MLB and D1 level.
Mhm.
This is a newer, not even a newer surgery, but I think the realities of Tommy John have just like changed
Yeah.
drastically over the last even like 5 years.
Mhm.
So it's going to take a while to catch up, but that's part of my like mission and kind of life goal. I'd love to help those younger athletes like get the help that they need.
Yeah.
So you agree with like how the educational gap is
Yeah.
big? And you think that's like bigger for athletes, like their knowledge, or do you think it's on the PTs kind of?
Uh, I think both. Um, I'm trying to think best. I mean, like one aspect of like, I mean, for the standard PT, it's essentially like when you go see your primary care physician.
Hmm.
It's like you want them to have a general idea of whatever
Yeah,
you want to at least have them like they'll guide you in the right direction, but like they can't possibly cover
yeah,
like everything.
because they would just need the experience, and if you're not seeing like Tommy John guys
Yeah,
every year, every month, like you're not going to get the experience you
yeah.
need to learn the situation, I
So
guess.
like the standard PT maybe gets 2 to 3, like 2 to 5 baseball players in a year.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's like like yes, they should know more, but they have probably more soccer players. They have more geriatric populations. They have more weekend warriors probably than what they then come through their doors typically for a PT. So it's like I get not putting your eggs in the basket of like finding out the ins and outs of Tommy John rehab. With that said, there's still like you know room to be gained. Like should they still try to get educated when they can? Like I agree, but also this is where I think like education of the athletes and the parents and the coaches is important because then it's like as what I've said is, but kind of sound gloom and doom from a PT perspective. Like there's still like PTs in most cities out there that like know the ins and outs of like baseball and Tommy John rehab.
Yeah.
So
So it's
like
just getting connected, like
yeah,
making sure the athletes are not just going to your standard PT maybe for the first few weeks or months
yeah,
might be okay, but like once you're getting into the thick of the rehab process, you need to make sure you're getting the correct information, the direct work, and
yeah,
like be with someone that knows Tommy John, that knows baseball, and can guide you in the right direction.
yeah, exactly.
And then I don't know how you feel about like transitioning to throwing coach. I know some PTs have more knowledge on that.
Mm,
And this second time around, like transitioning, being with you for the first, or being with Jordan and you, like
mm,
kind of tag teaming it for the first 4 months, and then doing like a hybrid with you and Anthony
mm,
Casiola really worked out for me.
mm.
And I really enjoyed that process. And now, like being with him, even though it's online, and then checking in with you
Yep.
and having him take care of like the actual throwing and mechanics kind of side of things, and then the actual throwing program. I think you're more than capable to write
Mm,
a throwing program, and it's pretty basic.
yeah.
But that has worked really well for me. What do you think about like those transition periods, and is that a necessity or?
Um, I think necessity. I wouldn't go that far saying necessity. I think it's beneficial, especially in an instance like you where you're a more advanced thrower.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a bit more nuance needed to improve like the mechanical side. Um, I would argue at like the lower levels, probably not as much,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
totally agree with that.
But
Yeah.
could you still make that happen? Like I suppose, but again, it has to be like the nice thing is like Anthony and I knew each other before before we started like cheering as a client. So like we already had a relationship.
Hmm.
And now it's just like it's cool because we get to work with each other and like kind of learn from each other in that process.
Yeah,
Where that might not be the case depend with like other throwing coaches and other PTs.
that's true.
So then the process becomes a little bit more fragmented.
Right.
And that's a big thing I've like harped on in the past about the rehab process is like there needs to be is like much streamlined communication between PT, between strength conditioning, between throwing as there can be. So that's where you might run into some issues of you want your athlete to do one thing, he may or may not relay that to his throwing coach. And then throwing coach thinks he's doing one thing, might tell him something else, and then like there's just lot miscommunication, and then before you know it, as a result we've like lost like a week or two of progress.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm not saying it's like definitely the case, but if you are going to go that route, just make sure that like your PT, your strength guy, hopefully you have someone that's qualified for strength conditioning, and like your throwing coach are all like on the same page and like there's regular communication. So that way it's like we know what needs to happen. In the instance of like we'll call it setbacks, bumps in the road, it doesn't lead to multiple weeks being affected. It might be just be a couple days here and there.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like a communication breakdown is what's going to cause the issues.
Yeah.
More so, yeah.
And then and then kind of piggybacking off that too, there's also just the aspect of like too many cooks in the kitchen,
Yep.
where it's just like
Yeah, that's what I found hard. I didn't want to. I was like trying to find a way to draw the line of like, okay, I'm getting 3 people involved in
yeah.
this surgery, but like I don't want to be working with all 3 at once, and
Yep.
that's just like too much. First of all, it's like that gets expensive,
Yeah.
but also just like let's have 1 person or 2 people that can work really well together
Yeah.
and just
Because like I
come
said,
at
then
this. That's 3 is a lot.
yeah.
Anything more than 2 is overdoing it for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think, with that, like once I'm not saying it has to happen a lot, but once you start getting kind of like some like dissenting opinions on like what needs to happen, like
Oh
that
yeah,
really quickly reduces buy-in for the athlete.
yeah,
Whether it be on bias
totally.
towards one or the other, like but you can't have like reduced buy-in because like I said, the primary thing with like any rehab process, whether it's TJ or whatever, is like you got to trust, you got to, blah, 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 trust the process, but like it's absolutely 100% true. And if you have two opinions that are different, if they don't get that like on the same page relatively quickly, or if that happens multiple times, trust is going to be reduced somewhere else and the athlete's going to start feeling kind of lost.
Totally.
And
I mean,
then that's going to be like, am I doing the right thing? And then the snowball effect happens of like, okay, I got to go seek out maybe another answer, another opinion.
yeah,
And then that becomes like a tough thing.
yeah. And I've been very grateful that you and Anthony have worked super well together through this rehab the second time. But I think that was a main breakdown in my first
Mhm.
surgery where I totally just felt completely lost because
Yeah.
I was told like one thing in one ear and then a
Yeah.
completely other thing in another ear, and it was like, which one do I do? And I kind of just went through this like merry-go-round of like, okay, I'm gonna do this day and then do this another day, and then it just is too much. And then you're
Yeah.
like, if you don't have confidence in the people you're working with, how are you supposed to have confidence in yourself and what
Yeah.
you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that was
It's a scary place.
eye-opening for me, and I thought it was like, oh, this is just part of the process, this is
Yeah.
normal, and like if you feel like that, that's when you know something is wrong,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
you got to speak up and like make a decision. And I've had athletes that have reached out recently kind of voicing that opinion of like, hey, I'm really lost, and they're asking me for opinions, and I'm like, well, if you're asking me for stuff, there's an issue because
Yeah.
I'm not a PT. I'm just in the Tommy John world and posting about my experience,
Yeah.
and I'm obviously not qualified to give you like PT advice, but I'll point you in the right direction of where to go. And I think it's just huge for athletes to realize that this is their process.
Mhm.
This isn't your PT's process. This isn't your throwing coach or your head coach's process. Like this is your journey in your career, so don't let someone else or multiple other people dictate
Yeah.
that. Right?
100%.
We talked a little bit about Anthony, and I just wanted to bring up something that he kind of talked about on the Layback podcast. And I know he's made some other posts about it too. And I just really like how he talks about the normalization of being cut open and
Mhm.
how it's way more serious than people make it out to be. And
Yeah.
there's parents that have their like young 13-year-old son. They're like, yeah, his UCL's not torn yet, but like I want him to get the surgery so that
Yeah.
he's coming back throwing harder and he's like healthy and doesn't have to do it later on in life, and just the normalization of being cut open was
Yeah.
never something that I really thought about. But I think it's pretty cool how he's like, if you're gonna work with me, Anthony is saying,
Mhm.
if you're gonna work with me, it's like delete all the images of your surgery, or at least like put them away in a different folder. Don't
Mhm.
focus on being cut open because that's such a mental like barrier.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that kind of?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's not even exclusive to like Tommy John. Like the amount of kids that I have like at the middle school, high school level where it's just like, oh yeah, my back's just been bothering me for like 6 months. And it's just like, it's not normal. And then like, but everyone on my team's back is bothering me. It's like, no, like that's not like we this like you're like let alone like the health side of it of like cool, you're have some resilience towards like pain and injury, but like your performance is definitely suffering and like you're not at your best. And this isn't like a thing that should just be like normalized. And like to your point, like with Tommy John, like just yeah, like getting cut open is it's trauma,
Yeah.
you know. It's not just like you stubbed your toe. Like you're having someone cut in you, uh cut into probably, you know, if they're doing a reconstruction, cutting into two different areas of you. Um and just taking parts out and like sewing back together, then suturing back up. Like that's not
Yeah.
a normal human
No.
process.
And just because you're asleep for it,
Yeah.
like it's kind of easy to justify it because you don't know really that it's going on, but your body knows and your nerves know,
Yeah.
your brain knows.
Yeah. And like I remember the first like arthroscopic like shoulder surgery I watched. I was just like, this is arthroscopic, and it's just like it's still pretty brutal, like on the shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't like watched a an elbow,
Oh man,
but like
they're
it's watching,
brutal.
yeah, like it's they're just like there's cameras in you, there's like tools in you, they're just shifting all
Oh
around.
yeah, the wrenching on
Like
it.
it's not that's not like a normal thing to go through, and like there's a reason why like when you're done you feel really bad and then like your arm has reduced range of motion. It's like if it was like a smooth process, like you'd be in and out and like the next day you had full range of motion and like your body wouldn't have any protective. But like those reduced ranges of motion and like those weaknesses are because the body has gone through significant amount of trauma and the body goes into a very very big protective mode that takes like weeks and weeks and weeks to like get out of.
Yep.
And that just is like that's not because it's a simple thing.
Right. Okay, and I want to kind of shift over to what players can kind of do to optimize, not even optimize their performance right now, because I know that's a very big scope, like that we could go on and on and on, but kind of what's in the player's actual control to put themselves in a good position right now to be a healthy athlete, and kind of more so on the workload side. So like, could you just run me through like a quick off season, fall ball, and then in season? Like, do you believe in taking time off? And then how do you space out some like high days?
So I think the time off thing is can be argued for a while. I think the older you are, the less time off you should take. Um,
And time off can look very
and it can
different
be
for
very different.
everyone.
Yeah. So if
Like,
we're talking about like pure time off of like no throwing, doing nothing, I think in an instance like you, let's say like you're fully healthy, like I try not to recommend more than like 2 weeks of like total rest. If it's a younger athlete, you know, middle school or younger, it's like take probably like 2 months. I think is a good of like doing nothing. I think is a good call. But if it's a little bit less than that, I'm okay with that. But I wouldn't be like, okay, you're competitive throwing, you know, during that time. It's like you if you know, if I would say maybe like a month off, not a month where you're just like a couple days a week, you're just playing light catch.
yeah.
If you are an older athlete, high school, and you have aspirations of playing like college ball, you want to get to the next level, we have to respect that like throwing's a skill.
Hmm.
You don't get better at the skill of throwing by not doing the skill.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I don't know what other like skill out there is like is more commonly like taught of like what will help you the best at this skill is you just do less of it. It's like no, you need
Yeah.
to do it. Like this isn't. you have to like get that adaptation. You have to
Totally.
work on like the efficiency of it. So like you have to ask that question based on like what the athlete's goals are, but anywhere from like 2 weeks to 2 months.
Okay.
And then from there, like with like fall ball, again, depends on what their schedule's like. In an ideal world,
Yeah, it depends on where they're at as well, and
yeah,
if it's a necessity. Me personally, I'm pretty against
yeah,
fall ball for almost every high school athlete.
yeah,
If pitchers at least, I think hitters maybe a different story because
yeah,
you're not putting stress by getting live looks
yeah,
at the plate, like
yep,
live AB is like that's fine. But if you're getting extra innings and extra stress on your arm in the fall,
yeah,
when you should be focusing on development,
yeah,
and because the reality is majority 99% of high school athletes are not where they should be.
yeah, yeah. And I'd say like the best. I mean, like we should accept that like being stronger, more powerful, more explosive. A is obviously better for performance, but B is like probably one of your greatest tools in your tool belt for like long term health. You can obviously like jack that up multiple ways too, but like we have to accept that like being bigger, stronger, more powerful than what you see as the average high school player is going to be their best like bet of like being resilient to the stresses of baseball. Problem is with like typical schedules, like they just don't have time for that. Um, Especially with like fall ball. And I'd argue that like fall, once summer season ends, take some time, go on vacation, spend time with your family, but then like use that time like get after in the weight room. Uh,
In the
Problem is
summer, once summer.
once summer ball's over,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
when summer ball's over. Um, Problem is though, like there's a general acceptance of that theory of like be bigger and stronger, and that's gonna be good for you. But athletes will just carry that through them throughout the year, and we
Mhm.
can't do that. It's
Yeah.
just like we have so much allocation of our workload of our bodies like resources. We can't have. I just always quit dimmer switches. You can have your baseball dimmer switch. You can have your physical development dimmer switch, and then also we can say like your life stretch dimmer switch.
Mm.
We can't have all baseball and physical development turn at the same time, especially when like life stretch is going to be fluctuating.
Okay.
As baseball goes up, physical up needs goes down. As baseball comes down, that's when you like turn up the physical development side. That's when you're getting after it. 4+ times a week, maybe doing like a little bit more of like a hard strength, like hypertrophy type workouts, staying at a table to do more like your explosive work on as like you get further in the off season. I lost my train of thought after that, but I see so many athletes where it's just like, okay, I'm playing baseball year round, and either they take it two ends of the spectrum of like, I don't have time to get after in the weight room, or I'm still going to try to get after in the weight room, and like generally both outcomes lead to the same, or both paths lead to the same outcome of like not your best performance and potentially setting yourself up for a further injury.
Yeah. So either undertraining or overtraining or just the structure overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the structure is the biggest part
Mhm.
that athletes have come to me for
Yeah.
through my coaching. It's just like that's a huge part about the training and finding when am I going to fit my upper body day, or if you're doing a full body lift, that's fine as well. But like structuring that around your high days seems
Yeah.
to be so problematic. And I've always struggled in my brain, like for my own training, of like, okay, today's a high throwing day. I can pair my high intensity lift and
Mhm.
upper body lift with this throwing day, but like that's just compounded stress.
Yeah.
But that seems to have worked for me.
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a correct approach, and then really make sure to like cool down the next day?
Yeah. I I typically I'm more biased towards something structured like that. Um, and when we're also like talking about arm care, I'll also say, okay, your like more difficult arm care exercises should also be like on your higher throwing days,
Right.
because I'm more biased then towards like that, like affords you more low days, recovery days.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I like line those up, and I think that's kind of one where people get themselves into trouble is like, oh, I want to spread out my stresses throughout the week,
Hmm.
and then if we're just essentially looking at it as like high days are your gas tank emptying out, your low days are your gas tank filling up. Uh, Moderate days are like not filling up, they're kind of just draining, like emptying out at a slower rate. If we're taking our low recovery days and we're turning into moderate days, then just by conservation of energy, our high days also become moderate days. But those high days are like where we get better. We don't get better by just doing a shit ton of like moderate days.
No.
So like again, your
tank's just gonna stay half full.
Stay half full, or like over time, long term, it's just like because you just don't have enough recovery, like it gets empty.
Drops.
Okay. So like from a lifting perspective, like I'm generally, I want to be careful how I answer this, but like I'm generally okay with athletes doing like a upper body day after high intensity throwing day. Caveat though is I think you have to earn the right to like kind of start having like those high days and low, or not high days, upper day, low day split of like a 4-day a week lifting program. That I think if athletes don't have a couple of years under their belt of more generalist 2 to 3 times a week full body days, I think trying to run that program of like 4 days a week, because again, yeah, you're not stressing the upper body more than twice a week, but like if we're looking at heavy lifts as a nervous system, CNS like stimulus that your body needs to recover from,
it's taxed 4 days.
Again, it's another thing where just like things like over time become more challenging to recover from. But in an instance like you've had a number of training over years, like you have the physical capacity to like take that on, whereas standard high schooler just doesn't.
Okay.
So like I wouldn't, in instances like that where they just don't have like the training history, say, okay, we're gonna go right into like 4 days a week. Because I just think like the nervous system tax is generally too much for them, their undertrained, underdeveloped bodies to recover from. And then like again, we get that long term like emptying out the gas tank where we just like, you're setting yourself up for like things to become strained, injured, like kind of like tweaks and twinges that just like kind of consistently don't go away.
Yeah. Could we talk a little bit about like direct forearm work? That's been something that I've really had to focus on, like with this second Tommy John and just the issues that I've had with overworking it.
Yep.
But also I think there's a good opportunity there for players that want to prevent injuries like this and strengthening that area. So how do you go about, like, for a healthy athlete, spacing out those direct forearm days where it's not going to put too much stress on that? Because I know throwing and lifting and all that, it's probably dependent on your lifting schedule. It's dependent on your throwing schedule, all that as well. So I know it's another multifaceted question.
Yeah. So like first and foremost, like the forearm musculature is probably like arguably your most direct best bet of like UCL protection. And you mentioned the Flex Pro podcast, but like Flex Pro Grip is like probably, they've done a lot of great work highlighting like the benefit of like mainly strictly your finger flexors, but like getting those strong, developing stiffness in like those muscles and those tendons. But there's also research out there showing like the benefit of the pronator, benefit of like the wrist flexor, benefit of like the brachioradialis and ulnar deviators, building up like the capacity in those muscles to tolerate load, and like this, and then basically like taking on the stress, the high levels of stress that comes with throwing a ball hard. Traditionally, where I think the boat has gotten missed is, I've talked about in the past of like, we're really, really good at making athletes really, really explosive and powerful. And we've kind of gotten that pretty dialed in. Like we know how to make an athlete like jump higher, like run faster, stronger. But we like cut that off, like essentially like right at the elbow. And then our work for like the forearm is like, we're just going to do hangs for like 30 seconds. Or we're going to do the rice bucket for like 2 minutes. And like, yeah, that still has benefit. Like, obviously any training is going to be like better than no training, but I think like we got to get after those muscles just like we would anything else. We want them to have like robustness or high capacity to tolerate load. So like we want to do like heavy reps. We want to do like explosive power work. Again, this is also going to be dependent on time of the year too. Because again, that stuff still has a cost. Like you're not going to, for your body, you're not going to be in season and running a 5x5 squat program. Because you would generally be pretty toasted.
Yeah.
Just similar like the forearm, like I'm not going to have an athlete go 4 sets of like wrist flexion eccentrics, um, like twice a week when they're trying to get their highest volume of throwing in. So I think you got to look at when the time of the year is. So recognize like those muscles still need to be like shown love and get work, but just like adjust the volume and adjust the intensity that you're working at. And that's generally typically how I'll do it. And I'll still kind of work it, as I said before, with the arm care stuff of on like their highest throwing days after they throw. And I usually just bake it into like their lifting. Cause I think that's like the easiest too. And it's like they're in the mindset of like,
Lift.
I'm lifting.
Yeah.
I'm just like attacking
Okay.
this muscle that like other athletes don't need to typically go after. But like I'm still trying to hit it at high RPE. I'm still trying to get like, a variety of like stimulus to it. It's not like this separate thing of like doing bands to RP 15, RP of like 3 for sets of like 20.
Okay. So maybe like prioritizing this direct forearm work during your like off season or rest time would be great. Building it into the lifts when you're not throwing at maybe your max full intent off the mound. That's a great opportunity to hit that.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably a time where you can like allocate the most time towards it because again, we're looking at like obviously like throwing is a forearm stress, and we need to be accounting for that. But you don't take it out once like your throwing has ramped up. You're just doing less volume of it. A little bit more like a quote unquote microdose approach. So you're still giving like that area some love. Just like you wouldn't stop lifting in season. You're still giving that area some love, but just like accounting for like the amount of stress that's going to get from the amount of throwing volume you're going to get.
Great. All right. So now I just want to get into a little bit. We'll transition kind of lightly, talk about just overall recovery kind of strategies and training strategies. And I'm just going to have you rate each of these just as we're going to see if it actually matters or if it's just kind of trendy. And this applies for people doing a rehab process or that just want to optimize their performance and prevent injuries down the line. So let's just go through these and just give it a 1 through 10 rating here.
10 being awesome.
10 being
okay,
great.
Cool.
This is the best thing you can do, and 1 is like probably should never consider
that.
Okay. So supplements. I know there's a lot out there, but I'm talking like creatine, collagen, electrolytes. If you want to break them up, you can. But
some are higher than others, and then like if I'm putting as an average, I'd probably say like a 7. I generally put creatine up pretty high. It's been pretty well studied. I think there's a good amount of benefit for collagen too. I typically recommend like zinc and magnesium, a good amount for athletes as well too. I mean, electrolytes are super important. There's some where it's like, okay, like we don't need to worry about that. And I do think it's like, it comes into the discussion like, okay, where are you allocating your funds to? Yeah. It's like if you have the ability to, like, I'll have like a tier of like I put creatine during the top for most athletes. But it's like if you have the funds and you think you're getting benefit out of it, like, and you're doing all these other steps, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second, then sure. But I'd say overall, as a whole, on average for all supplements, I'd say like a 7.
Okay. Nutrition, more so. Let's go with whole food diet to start off.
I'll put it on a sliding scale. Kind of talk about like the great power comes great responsibility. 95-mile-an-hour thrower, 8 or 9 out of 10. 70-mile-an-hour thrower, 4 or 5 out of 10. Typically at those levels, I'm going to reference like it being the younger levels. Like the common issue is more just like they're not eating, not eating enough.
Calorie intake
is like is far more important at the younger levels than it's like than it is to make sure it's a whole food diet. And again, as a parent myself, I get like it being hard to like food prep and do all this stuff. So like just more important, like don't get too caught up in like eating a healthy diet to the point where like your kid's underfed and just doesn't have like any energy to go play 6 games in a weekend. Okay. So again, sliding scale that goes up higher, like the harder of a thrower you are.
Okay. So it's more important. You should prioritize it if you're higher level.
Yeah.
the more important it becomes.
Yep.
Sleep.
10.
Yeah.
10. Like,
That's, you don't have to worry about the funds there. That's
yeah, like that's super
conscious.
easy. Um, I'll knock it down a peg of like, don't stress out about your sleep. It's like, don't take it as a slave to your whoop score, where it's like, oh crap, I got 6 hours and 45 minutes of sleep last night. Like, I can't possibly train hard today. It's like, you're going to have bad nights of sleep. It's going to be okay. I do think it is still probably the most potent performance enhancer.
Mm.
But again, to the point of like, not to the point where it's like, if you have a couple of bad nights of sleep or if you stretch a bad sleep that like, it's going to like drastically impact like your long-term performance. But a lot of athletes I see again are like 6-7 hours sleep at night. And that's probably like a primary focus I have them is like, just start trying to like increase like a little bit as time goes on.
Okay. Red light therapy.
I can't speak enough on it. I don't have enough experience with it myself. I know there's research to back it out there.
I'm a
Uh,
big red light guy, so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting. But also, I'm very aware of like there's so many studies, but also there's so many other studies saying that it doesn't
yeah.
do much, and it's like
I
if you
would.
believe in my mind, I just do it because it's like it's not affecting me negatively. So
Yeah, yeah.
let's do it if
That's
you have
where I
access to it.
that's
But
where I would generally like put it. Of like, if you have easy access to it, it's not going to add you. And not this isn't just to red light. This is a lot of
yeah,
things
I
like
know we've
massage,
talked
like
about
cupping,
this
whatever. Like, if
needling.
you have needling too, if you have easy access to it and it doesn't like, it's not costing you a ton of money, go for it. Am I going to recommend someone go out and buy like a red light therapy machine? Like, no. With that said, I'd say like probably like a 5 or a 6 with that. Recognizing like some people are going to find more benefit of it, and that's totally cool. Some people are going to be like, I tried it and did nothing for me, and that's also totally cool too. Um, yeah, so I'd say like a 5 or 6 were like like there's no net negative to it.
Okay. And the next one was dry needling. So would you loop that in with
I would loop it in as a dry needler. I would probably loop it into, or it's like so I recently just like am going through a dry needling cert, and I fully like recognize I'm not making like some profound impact by sticking a needle and setting up a stim on someone, but it's a tool that like I can utilize for patients to, I say, it opens up a window to like provide more of the more effective stuff, which is heavy loading, proper exercise. A lot of instances gets athletes a time just like chill out, which is also beneficial. Um, so I would say, due to bias, I'll put dry needling up a little higher as like a solid 6. So I do think you can probably get a little more like direct impact to a cranky muscle than a lot you can do like more things with. But again, it's another thing like, if you are tried everything, I have a hard time thinking dry needling is going to put you over the edge. Um, as much as I'm enjoying utilizing it, but I wouldn't be like it's a hard, a thing where it's like you have to go get this done.
okay. And then for actual rehab processes, I just want to hear a little bit about like scheduling and like PT or doctor's protocols. I know it's a fine line. It's like the doctor has a lot to say, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you need to respect what they want. But what are your thoughts about like trying to have open communication with a doctor and say, hey, I'm like my feeling is they're not involved in
Yep.
the process
Yep.
at all. Like yes, they did your surgery, but no, they're not there every day to see how the rehab goes, how you're reacting to certain loads and whatnot, and they're not updated like we've talked about earlier about specialized
Yeah.
Tommy John rehab.
Yeah.
So handing you a piece of paper after surgery and saying go do this for the next 5 months
Mm.
is problematic, and I've seen athletes that literally are following that paper with the standard PT, and that is not a great plan in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I think I don't even know really how to answer this. I think like you should still, like, this isn't like, recognizing a lot of those like protocols are older. and this isn't just like exclusive to just like Tommy John, but like a lot of like protocols are just like, or guidelines, whatever, are like written for like the general population of like, I would say the average person that gets like surgery,
Mhm.
which as many Tommy Johns as there are, baseball players are still not the average person that ends up having like an orthopedic surgery. I would argue. I would generally argue, a little bit, for the most part, probably less fit, less like overall healthy, and a lot of protocols need to be like scaled to that. Is this mean like you just totally throw it out the window and it's just like, okay, yeah, you got full range of motion, let's just send heavy valgus loading like week 2 of TJ? Like, no, like, but recognize it's like the guidelines are in place, and I think there's still, you should be aware of them. Um, but with that, have like your own process of like, okay, I'm going from point A to point B to point C, D, whatever, and so on. As far as like progressing load, progressing stress to the arm in an appropriate and safe manner.
Yeah.
Typically, that's not going to fall, like, especially on the front end, it's not going to like fall too much outside the guidelines of like what a protocol is. Where, it becomes like a don't ask, don't tell type thing later on, is like when you start adding in more like the true upper body, like plyometric type stuff, where it's like, okay, we got to get maybe a little more aggressive than what like this protocol is saying. But again, you've gone through like your checks and balances of like knowing like, okay, this athlete's ready to tolerate that. So again, it's not like, oh, we did isometric, yeah, we just started doing like bicep curls. Now we're just gonna go send like 3 by 50 bicep impulses, like at max effort. Like, yeah, that's a big jump that we're not going to do yet. But I'd say later on down the road, it's like that's where, and that's why I think like working at the baseball focused PT is valuable, because like there is some, you have to be a little bit more expansive with like the amount of stress you're applying to your arm to make sure it's like definitely prepared to throw. That I think like traditional like surgical protocols miss.
Yeah, and I think it goes like both ways, where those protocols can either slow down an athlete or speed them up. And I kind of experienced both,
Yeah.
where it was like my first time, yeah, it says throw month 5, start your throwing.
Mm.
But if you're not feeling ready and your body's not ready to throw and you're just going off the paper, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And that should never be a problem in a TJ rehab in the first place, because you
Yeah.
should have the resources around you to recognize that that's a massive issue.
Yep.
And then, yes, it can hold you back as well.
Yeah.
That being said, there's so many different protocols out there.
Yeah.
And I've gotten messages from kids that say, I was never even given a brace. I haven't worn a brace my whole surgery.
Yeah.
My doctor doesn't believe in braces.
Yeah.
And then there's other people where you're wearing the brace for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's like recognizing that paper is very general, and it's also sometimes it's the opinion of this
Yeah.
doctor. And there's many different opinions and many ways to approach it. And yeah, these opinions, different ways, can still work for
Absolutely.
everyone.
Yeah.
Like, might not be the best for someone here, but it's gonna get them through it still. They're still
Yeah.
gonna be able to come out on the other side
Yeah.
and get through. Maybe it's not as clean and smooth, but it still is gonna work. It's gonna
Yeah.
be okay.
Yes.
Kind of a little bit controversial, which I've been having a lot of arguments with people about, is distance versus velocity based return to throw, and maybe like throwing pulse in there as well. How
Yeah.
important.
Um, I've debated on this like myself for a while, because I mean, like I do think there's better outcomes using objective measures. Objective being like pulse and velo. Um, what that improvement in outcomes is, I couldn't tell you. Is it like 2%? Maybe. Is it like
Mhm.
20%? Also possible, but probably not. And like I think that there's been plenty of like athletes that have gone through like a distance based like rehab protocol and have done totally good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so does that mean I think it's like the best thing? Like, no, but I don't want athletes to feel like, oh, my doctor says I have to follow the distance-based protocol, and therefore, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, you can still do it. Like, I've had my clashes with like doctors in the past on it, and just like, I just have modified, and it's just like, okay, I still want this relationship with this doctor. I'm not going to like fight this moral high ground of superiority to make
Yeah.
myself feel good, like, because I think it's also what's best for the athlete. But I can still make modifications, be like, yeah, we'll follow this program, but I'm also just going to say throw within like these velo guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Or like or if it's like a distance based, I'll be like, okay, just try to also stay within this RP. I know it's also subjective, but if we can just say like more guidelines, um, it's not going to be perfect, but like at least it like gives like more, narrows the lane of like how much they can swerve outside of it, versus a purely going like from 90 to 120 to 150. So like with that said, I still think like the objectivity of like radar rate and then radar plus pulse is like my gold standard, but not everyone has access to that too.
Exactly.
So I think you just have to be modifiable, and you gotta like just meet the athlete with like what they're capable of like achieving consistently, and that's where you're at. And it's recognize that like they'll still get there. Like you can still just make some tweaks like a distance based protocol and be like, okay, instead of doing working up to 150 today, like maybe we just do more throws at 120, and just like work within that protocol and just being like a little bit more precise with it. But I think they'll all work. Again, velo and pulse is my preferred method, but it doesn't have to be like it's not a death sentence to progress one way or the other.
I think one like misconception about or like idea that people have about velocity based return to throw is that it's like more constraining because you have
Mhm.
to stay within these boundaries. And I'm pretty sure it was the Layback podcast also that talked about this. And I just love the analogy of like, it's actually less constraining because if you think about having a velocity range on your throwing day, you can throw from your knees, you can throw from 90 feet, you can throw from 60
Mhm.
feet, you can do athletic throws, you can do plyo throws, you can do so many different things within that range.
Mhm.
Um, that it just opens up kind of your abilities of what you can do for the day, and it's less constraining than people might think. So I really liked that analogy, and I think what's worked out really well, um, this rehab process, and Anthony really prioritizes like taking the mind out of it,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that the distance based programs do very well.
Yeah.
It's like you're not thinking about the number,
Mhm.
so the combination of both have worked out really well for me, where it's like go out and throw out to 90 feet. In the last 10 throws we're
Mm.
going to get the velo
Yeah.
range, see what you're at, and try to get within these boundaries. So ultimately it's like just trying to take the mind out of it
Yeah.
is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about like some bumps in the rehab process,
Mhm.
like how to navigate those. Obviously there's a wide range of what could happen during your rehab process, and like you commented on my post the other day, that's kind of the name of the game with
Yeah.
TJ. It's like I can't remember the exact words you said, maybe you
Just navigating
remember.
a series of kick to the nuts.
Yep, that summarizes the rehab process. But like how do you go about staying in that mentally, and what advice would you give for an athlete that's like in the dumps right now?
Yeah. I mean, just like recognizing that like, it's a normal thing. I think some people will still try to argue that like, oh, you should not have bumps in one road. And it's just like I just think there's definitely athletes who have gone like a totally smooth process and that's been great. But for the most, majority of athletes, like you're gonna run into some hiccups. Like you're trying as much as we try to control for every like variable, like we can't control for all the things that go into like we can't control all the things that make that account for like how your body responds to like increases in stress. So like we have like athlete A, athlete B, and we like have everything 100% the exact same, and they're responding the exact same at up until whatever point, we tell them both, okay, we're going to bump up like 2 miles an hour. And for one athlete, for whatever reason, that may be put them over the edge, and they might start getting like irritated and sore from that. And then athlete B, that might be like totally fine. And like, there's just so many variables that go into like, as we kind of talked about that gas tank emptying out, and we have no, we have like data like we can get HRV and stuff like that and readiness testing, but it still is only just a piece of the puzzle. So like it's a totally normal process. It's a totally normal part of the process to have like bumps on the road. It's not that you've retore. It's not that that you're stalled out. I would just consider like it's just part of the journey. Easier said than done. But like very very likely you're going to get through the other end of it and be okay.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I was thinking and what I've experienced
Yeah.
through this whole time. And it's easy to go down that spiral of like, man, I'm never gonna play again, and
Yeah.
it's everything's falling apart, and my arm is retorn. But
Yeah.
like taking a step back and realizing like how hard it is, first of all, to re-tear
Mm-hmm.
that surgery area, and just that these are very very normal feelings to have through a
Yeah.
rehab process. It's just so key, and just having confidence in yourself, and then your resources and the people you're working with as well, to just say, you know what, they got me, they know how to handle this, and just keep your head on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You'll get through it. So any final thoughts you want youth athletes to hear about like health and longevity of
I think
just overall?
at the young level, like you train hard, but also like I'm gonna like, put this in the context strictly of like the weight room. The weight room is probably like the best thing you can do for your overall long term health. One of them. When you're younger, it doesn't take much to like make a big change, and it's kind of something we've talked about, and I've talked about other strength coaches. Like athletes just think they need to do it all, and yeah, you need to have good intense workout sessions, but you don't need to be doing like 4 or 5, 6 day a week workout sessions. Um, like I said, 2 or 3 days of like pushing it hard, recovering well, it will go a long, 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 long ways of like making good progress on the performance side and on the health side too. I think that's generally like a good sweet spot to like keep you healthy and like on the field for as long as possible. So I'd say like start trying to do a focus of like develop a plan even in season now of like making sure you're allocating time to the weight room, um, but recognize that you don't need to be on the Sam Sulek program of like push pull legs times two. Um, if you do that, you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah. And like recognizing that doing those 5 sessions, 6 sessions a week is like going to cause a decline
Yeah, yeah,
actually. And that the 2 to 3 is like what's going to most
yes,
boost your performance
yep,
and not drag you down.
yeah.
Okay, great. Just give yourself a plug. Like if athletes want to work with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at terry.phillips.dpt, I believe. And
We'll
then,
put it up on the
yeah,
screen
or
too.
you can go to my website, www.phillipsrehab.com. You can contact me. You can send me a DM on Instagram or contact me through our website. Both work out great. I see patients in person and remote. Love working with both, and not just exclusive to baseball either.
Yeah, and he sees people for rehab and then also for strength and conditioning too. Both are very great aspects of working with Terry. So definitely check him out. He's out of Base by Pros here in Lynnwood. So huge shout out to them as well. As you can see, we're using their studio
Yep.
right now. So shout out to Nick Kemper for letting us use this as well. But thanks for listening, and hope you guys learned some valuable lessons out of this.
Thanks, guys.